So off he went to his grandfather's chest and found him a coat of the very, very best, and the biker put it on. Well, welcome again to 100 years on. Now we'll cut to a different profile, I think. So I went into the storage and found what I thought was my grandfather's coat. Close but no cigar. This is actually my step-great-uncle or my great-step-uncle, or one of those confusing things. The family tree gets very, very confusing. Still, it was made in 1934, 1936. There we go. Elegant. But it's a chance for an introduction. Exactly. Grandfather and his motorbike ride 100 years on. What fun. So, grandfather, probably born at that wonderful house in 3 Hyde Park Gate. It seems he was born in Kensington, and that's where that place is, so could have been born at home. He had 2 brothers. Their father, Charles Percy, seems to have been one of the major directors for the George Wills Company. When George Wills died, only 3 years after grandfather was born, I think Charles Percy, grandfather's father, got 14 parts of the company. But it seems strange because there were 10 parts given to 2 brothers each, and there was another 6 parts given to a couple of chaps who seemed to be the managers, and it's all, there we go. So Charles Percy seems to have been in charge of the company. Really can't find out much about him. Of course, a couple of days ago, cousin Stephen came up with another photo album, and this one was from our great-grandmother, Clarissa Patten Beaton. Just a second, we're about to turn around. All the chaps are restoring this wonderful faux Venetian villa here in the middle of the town here. So Clarissa Patten Beaton had this photo album. We might be able to put some photos up of her and the family and stuff. Charles Percy was photographed fishing in Norway and shooting in Scotland, and there are even some photos of young Lionel in there. So yes, it's fascinating. There are also photos of Sheila, and I remember Sheila Streetfield. When she was older, she kept confusing me with my grandfather, which is a bit of a compliment, really. Sheila was, there's a photo of them at Chid, which I believe is where Sheila lived, at Chiddington Castle in Kent, I think it is. And they obviously had a whale of a time. There were lots of photographs of them in very fancy places, but Sheila was very much, it seems, part of the family. And the family legend is that she was great friends with grandfather and his brothers, and she got disinherited for frequenting too many of the people working at Chiddington Castle. Just a sec, the electric carabinieri going past there, how wonderful. So they all put some money aside to give her an income for the rest of her life. But we'll come back to Sheila at another stage because there's another couple of fun stories. So yes, there's lots of photos of them, Lionel growing up, and then him in all his uniform as he went to a naval college. And I think he was accepted, I think it's 1917, just towards the end of the First World War. So I think he and his brothers were quite lucky to be born a few years too late to get into that awful mess. But there's lots of family stories about, people of their parents' generation who lost their lives in the war. All quite difficult. So Lionel, yes, came out of the war, presumably was seeing if he wanted to be part of the George Wills and Co. And he and his brother set off for Australia. Well, so what happened to him after Australia Well, in Australia, he got terribly keen on Speedway, and there are a bunch of photos that seem quite fun. And he wrote an article that got published in Motorcycle News, I think it was, that historians of Speedway look to as one of the people who was instrumental in introducing Speedway into the UK. I'm not sure he set up the first race, but he was very much part of the early Speedway events, and he seemed to be a mentor for a famous lady Speedway rider, Faye Taylor. Lots of talk about how he was helping her with her career. And Lionel, while he was out in Australia, married my grandmother in Perth. She was called Sitter in Australia, Nina in England, Edith Winifred Sitter Stapledon, and it seems their marriage was all over the Perth newspapers. Must have been a social occasion or something. So that was after the trip, and that was 1931 it seems, January 31, and my father was born in October 31, so good for them. And of course, as typical with the family history, the father was born about the same time that his grandfather died. So it seems that grandfathers pop it off as soon as the grandchildren are born. Let's hope that doesn't happen with me, but there we are. Because grandfather Lionel died in 65 when I was 7. I remember meeting him. I remember going to his house. He lived in Trieste. He'd had what they described back in the 50s as a difficult divorce. And he and his new wife moved to Trieste, which back at that time was not part of any particular nation state, so they could live their lives without any particular country coming after them, or any whatever difficulties there may or may not have been, and I really don't know what they are, and I'm sure Uncle John will correct me on all of this, what should we say, misinterpretation of family history. But it's been a very pleasant walk. Lionel, I do remember very much, and the funny thing was, I went back 10 years or so after he'd died, and I remember the smell of the house. It was quite extraordinary. Lovely house, grand piano sitting there. He liked playing the piano, and he and second wife Madge liked to have canasta parties. And there we go, we don't have many canasta parties lying around nowadays, do we? So we shall try and put a few photos up of what I remember of him, or what we've got. But there's almost nothing of him from the 1926 album and the few photos that my mother kept, which is, there we go, what can we say? Rumours are that in the Second War he spent his time training motorcycle dispatch riders, which, there we go, I mean, far nicer than being at the thick end of things. So there we go, very talented. His brother Philip, who was on the journey, we might even have a separate little episode on him, but in the Second War, Philip, who after the Australia trip had decided he fell off too much and wanted to take up flying, was very much involved with gliding, and he was second in charge of the Air Force Auxiliary. I'm gonna have to check that out, but anyway, so like delivering planes to places and stuff. So he did very well, and Philip was very instrumental in the gliding community. He had various world championships, and he I believe glider people know him terribly well. And his son Philip's son Justin, who I hope to go and see in New Zealand, is still a very well renowned glider pilot. So that was that side, gliding. Good for them. Right, lovely walk, lovely town. And yeah, we'll go and get changed into some proper clothes, I guess. All right. Hope you have a wonderful day. Ciao.